Well, hello. Here we are again. Hi, everyone who's with us already, and I'm sure more people will hop on as we get going and start joining us on Facebook Live as we start broadcasting. As usual, housekeeping. We always do a little bit of housekeeping at the beginning. If you've got questions, can you pop them in the Ask a Question box at the bottom? If you've got a guest you would like, hi Nadine, if you've got a guest you would like me to invite on, we have one slot left in July before we go on our summer break, and summer break to my back garden. So yeah, if you've got a guest that you'd like to me to approach, then do let me know, and we'll put them in the mix and see what comes out, see who gets the most votes. We have last week there was a request for me to try and get Grace and Perry, and I can tell you in the background some moves have been made. We just don't know where that might go, but some moves have been made, and the person who's done it knows who they are. Thank you very much, and I'm very grateful. So yeah, moves have been made, so we'll see what happens with that one, but I'll do a special for that. I won't do it as one of the regular Wednesday slots. So yeah, if you've got someone you would like me to approach as that last speaker, then let me know. And if you've got any questions from today's session, then pop them in the Ask a Question area, and as you know, generally we come to that about 1:45. So I'd like to invite my lovely guest. We're both in white today, Cathy.
I know, we're basically in a bit of a uniform. Yeah. I got the memo, yeah.
Well, Ted sets the scene, doesn't he? So here's Teddy. He sets the scene.
There we go.
And he's all in white. So we have to set the scene. Hi, Jonathan and Serena. So Cathy's my lovely guest today, and Cathy is the reason why we're all here. So I don't know whether any of you remember, but back in the early days of lockdown, like day 1 or 2, I put the message out saying, okay, we need to go online. How do we do that? I've got no idea. And all those messages about Zoom and House Party and Microsoft Teams and words literally that were new to my vocabulary started popping up in my messaging box. And Cathy very quietly came in and said, have you looked at Crowdcast? And then left me with it.
Yeah, I just dropped it with you and then squirreled away. Not knowing much about it myself, but I did a little bit of research about it and thought, what a great platform to look at whilst we're all in our homes, you know.
Well, it's been absolutely transformative for me. You know, I've grown immensely through doing this, from someone who hated even having her photograph taken to being prepared to sit in front of a camera. I think now I'm on about 30. Big swallow. And I'm much better at it now. We were back in the day, we were saying, chatting just in the green room, weren't we? Saying back in the green room, is the green room actually green? No, sadly not. And it hasn't got any cocktails or anything in it either, which is sad. But we do get to check our mics and make sure everything's working. So the green room is quite a good place for us before we go live. But we were chatting in the green room and saying, you know, it seems such a long time ago, doesn't it? That early days of, you know, lockdown, and we've all come a long way in that period, and we're all in this together, but we're all doing it our own way. Some of us want to do it quietly and, you know, just take it as a sabbatical, and that's absolutely fine. And some of us want to try something new, learn a new skill. Some of us want to change old habits. Lots of things that and all of it's fine. Whatever is, just do you. I think that's, you know, what we've been trying to say all the way along, is just do you. And Crowdcast has become us. So I've become a broadcaster, and I'm actually loving it. I'm loving it. I had a good look at it, and the other platform I looked at was Be Live. But Crowdcast just had a little bit of an essence of something a bit special about it. It just had a little bit of sparkle, a bit of fairy dust. And who doesn't like a bit of fairy dust in their life. So yeah, we went with Crowdcast, and I'll be forever grateful. Thank you, Cathy, for that. Lovely,
pleasure.
Suggestion, because it has led on to us doing these broadcasts, which I know everyone is, really appreciated. It's led to us launching a new event, an online event called Art 360, which artists will be able to participate in September. It's open for applications now, so if anyone's watching and you want to apply, we will take 180 artists in total. And from that 180 artists, 30 will be selected to go live. And that will be like an open studios kind of event for them. And I'm really looking forward to September. That's why we're going to take a bit of a break from the middle of July through August, because I'll probably need to do some vocal coaching. Get chords going. So it has led to quite a transformation in the pure business. So we're all very grateful to you for that suggestion. And I think it's interesting, isn't it? It's one of the things we've chatted about in the past is you notice what you notice. And there was a lot of noise around that time, but I noticed that, and it stood out amongst the crowd of comments. And nothing happens randomly, does it? So it was meant to be. Even the challenges and the great things are all meant to be. They all kind of grow us. So, Cathy,
Lesley,
could you tell us a little bit about your life?
Wow.
Starting from the very beginning, because it's a very good
place to start.
In the words of Julie Andrews.
Yes, of course.
Tell us how because you are now an associate editor of O Magazine, which is a wonderful magazine that I subscribe to, and I have done work through the days of it being called O Comely, and now it's called O. And you're also an amazing coach, life coach, and your business called Wise Bodies.
Yes.
So if you could just give us a little amble through how you got to there and give us an insight into your life, that would be marvelous.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Well, thank you for that introduction. And well, I succinctly help people to get unstuck. And I have a curiosity for that, because I probably spent 25 to 30 years being quite stuck myself, which kind of began in my late teens, getting extreme anxiety and stress, which led to being on medication, going to see different therapists. And this was all done very quietly behind the scenes. I was still working as an art director, got my first publishing job at 18 and doing design, working in editorial teams. All of this was going very well. But underneath that, I was kind of holding on for dear life and finding things very scary. And that kind of continued for many years. And I started to get curious about, rather than just trying to fix it, put a plaster over it, try and find a strategy to just get through this moment, as my career and my life was expanding, I just began to want to become an expert in my own understanding and the nature of being human and all of those experiences that means. And so I started to go on my own quest, and I became an expert by experience of reading different books, going to different retreats, and ending up in Germany with the spiritual teacher Byron Katie to really look at the nature of our realities and what causes us to have different experiences. And that led to a kind of powerful kind of tectonic shift in how I lived with my anxiety and depression. And that kind of, it kind of walked away. I didn't do anything other than it. I just noticed it didn't show up in my life anymore. And it was very profound and also very unremarkable. And it led me then to train in this particular field, in this particular work, which is that we deal with our problems as if they're not made of thought, as if they are fixed and if they are real. And so no wonder things can feel overwhelming and very scary when we are confronted with a reality that we hold as absolutely steadfast. And so I'm fascinated now in looking at the nature of that and beginning to question that, because ultimately when we can question what we think is the truth, it can fall away and we can have a kind of profound freedom, really, and we can operate in creative, spontaneous response to life rather than a terror of what could, might, should happen. And it's very freeing. And so I use that in my work editorially with O Magazine, and I also use it in how I coach people to help support them to get unstuck too. So that's kind of been my 25-year journey through publishing, editorial design and coaching and my own personal.
Do you think having that, because I know I suffered very much from anxiety in my very young life, around that age 18 to early 20s. And do you think having success and being kind of thrust into the expectation of success had an impact on that?
Yeah, I think I was probably my hardest taskmaster. And of course, there's always going to be that not good enough little kind of quietly pulsing through your veins, which is obviously leading you to be having the motor constantly on, you don't realize, but it's just there buzzing. And so I think having that, and having successful parents, and all of this kind of sense of what that means, where you're coming from, therefore I have to be a certain way of expectation, and finding that a lot of the time I would fall off the wagon and feel like a failure. So all of that narrative. I
so respond to that, because that not good enough, we're not going to ever be good enough, is it's a fiction, isn't it? It's a fiction in our mind that holds us back and keeps us stuck, as you describe it, and holds us back from achieving our happy life, our true potential, stops us opening the doors that will hopefully lead us into some personal fulfillment. And it so resonates with me. I had a very successful family, and I came into my early working life with a bang. I just, didn't expect it, and definitely suffered from high levels of stress because of that level of personal expectation I put on myself. And, I say it all the time, be kind to yourself. If I could give myself, my younger self, one massive message is, be your own best friend, be kind to yourself. You're doing the best you can right now, and that's good enough. Good enough is good enough, isn't it? It's
absolutely. And we only know what we know at the time that we do something or make a decision, and then we look back and go, why didn't I do such and such? And it's like
that
we don't know
benefit of hindsight, that you only know what you know. And I know for myself, and I don't know whether this resonates with you, that, in those early years, in those first 10 years or so of my working life, 18 to like 28 or so, I do kind of feel I sleptwalked through it a little bit. I don't think I enjoyed it for the moment as much as I could have done. I kind of sleptwalked the experience because I didn't know enough about personal awareness. It wasn't something that was introduced in our education, in our schooling, in the way that we talk about it so freely now with our children, about what makes you happy, and that's okay. You can feel unhappy or grumpy today. That's okay. Don't but understand how it feels, and if you want to change it. So what was the moment when you noticed that the change had happened, and you said you went to a retreat with Byron Katie. Was that?
Yes, Byron
Tell
Katie. Yes, Byron
us about
Katie.
that.
She, well, I had a relationship end that I thought was my forever relationship, and that kind of ended several years ago. And I found that very difficult to get through. I was kind of in a lot of grief, and I couldn't move through it. And so I was started to seek ways to help find relief. And so I'd go to see these various people, and then I just happened to find out about this teacher called Byron Katie. She lives in America, but she was doing a 2-week retreat in Germany, and it happened to be coming up in a couple of weeks. And I had such a strong, like, you've got to do this, just do it, sign up, go. And I just signed up, had a little bit of money to just throw at it, go along. So I went along, not quite knowing who she was really, other than I was just fascinated to find out more. And it was it's called the School for the Work, and she has 4 simple questions that she asks, which you bring any stressful thought to, which begins with, is it true? Is the first question. And it's a simple yes or no answer to that. It's not no, but, and then a whole story, or yes, but, da, ba, da, ba, da. It's simply a single syllable of yes or no. And we don't try and manipulate our answer. It's absolutely, is this true? And then the second question is, can you absolutely know that it's true? Which allows you just that little bit of space to explore whether this really has its truth.
I'm writing them down so I can add them in
if
later.
It's true, yes. And then the third question is, what happens? How do you react when you believe the thought? So I could have a thought, for example, which is, my dad never listens to me, and that could be some drip feeding story that I have told myself throughout my life, which makes me feel disconnected from my dad, makes me feel frustrated, makes me feel distant. I can't then talk to him. I have a whole story about that. But that simple, stressful thought of dad doesn't listen to me, is it true? Can I absolutely know it's true? How do I react? What happens when I believe the thought? And then the final question is, who would you be without the thought that dad doesn't listen to me? And you sit with that. And it's a meditation, and it's a practice, and it sounds so simple and so kind of like cognitive. It sounds like cognitive responses to 4 questions. But when you are there for 2 weeks sitting in this, the questioning of who you think you are and all the stress that you bring to it, it begins to fall away. And it's very powerful. So I did this particular work with her and left after 2 weeks feeling kind of newly born. Like everything that I believed, everything that I thought was true was sort of fell away. And it kind of left me so present, so with the capacity to be so present and so aware of the nature of thought, because that is a beautiful thing, to start to become aware of the nature of our thinking.
Absolutely. I had yesterday, I woke up feeling very down, and I became very aware of the fact that it was my choice of how I handled this. I was feeling very down, and I'm a talker, so I articulated this to Paul, my husband, and I said, and this is how I'm feeling today, and I know that it's my responsibility to deal with it. And but I realized that not only was that dragging me down during the day, and I was struggling to move past it and trying to find my way through it, it was dragging everybody else down with it. And the power of your thoughts, they cause these ripples of energy, out, don't they? And last week we were doing the meditation with Nadine, and meditation gives you that space, like you've just described, you know, when you were there, gives you that space just to make an opportunity for a different way of being. And it gives you the opportunity to hear things you haven't heard before, deep from inside you or from wherever. It gives you the opportunity. I think I found meditation and Reiki transformative in my life. And I would advocate them to everybody to have a look at. But that sounds amazing. That sounds life-changing.
No, it was, and it was really, you know, and it's a particular practice that is, you know, part of my daily life now, really. And it's kind of, and I really feel that, you know, every day, or, you know, we have a shower, we wash our hands, we clean up, you know, we keep our skin and our bodies clean, but we don't do very much for our minds as far as allowing them to be clean, to run clear. You know, we have a whole load of crazy junk.
Yeah.
Crazy junk that fills up. You know, if you imagine it's like an attic full of everything that's ever happened to us, everything we've taken from it, every assumption we've ever had, every judgment, bias, fear is like there with its own little cardboard box filled to the brim. And then we wonder why we're kind of tripping over, making the same mistake again, getting caught in patterns, and it's innocent. You know, it's not that we're doing anything wrong. It's a very innocent kind of way of, well, that's just, you know, it's just how I am, and it's how it is, how it is. And it's like, it's not how it is. It's absolutely not how it is.
How often do we say that? Oh, it's just who I am. It's just how it is. And it doesn't have to be. We have absolute power to change our everyday, our life. And one of the things that we were talking about previously was, you know, the what did you say, the awe in the ordinary, to
The awe in the ordinary,
to look for the awe in the ordinary. That's, you know, that's an amazing grounding way of being, a way of living. Is this morning I had to go to get some stamps and some postcards and some things from the shop, and I've been very resistant to doing this because I have to stand in queues wherever I go, in really long queues. But actually, once I started doing it, I gave myself the time to really appreciate it. I stood in the queue and I really looked at people, and I looked around me, and I really gave myself the time to just experience the moment. So I walked through the town and I saw people, and I stopped to chat, socially distanced clearly, with people who I came across, because, you know, you're going to, in a small town like that, you're going to bump into people, you know. Not physically bump, I assure you. There was no physical bumping, just, you know, proverbial bumping. And I really, I spent an hour doing this, and I really started to appreciate the value of queuing. And we're so good at queuing as English people, aren't we? And I've always been like, oh, why do we do that? But actually, it was such a wonderful thing, just to give myself the time and an appreciation, and give my brain time to breathe and appreciate new things, see things differently. There were some people caring for the verges, so they were all like in quite distance from each other, but they were there looking at the wildflowers. And so I started looking at the wildflowers. And these are things that, as I said, you know, sometimes we sleepwalk past, we don't see or appreciate, and they're so wonderful in our everyday.
Yes, no, they are. And I love that you say sleepwalking there, because it just points me back to my work, in that I support people to gently wake up. Because when we're sleepwalking, we're not necessarily aware of it, other than feeling a little bit of disquiet perhaps, or thinking something is going on out there which is causing us, you know, stress or whatever. But actually, you know, that's a a little gentle tap on the shoulder that we are asleep.
Yeah, and
You know, that we're asleep.
Helping people to wake up, to become conscious that they have choices and to become aware of how it feels in their body is, I find, a true privilege. To when you see it, when you see it suddenly dawning that they've just been making an assumption, and this has been making them miserable and unhappy, and to see people wake up is to that and truly appreciate that they have the choice to do whatever they want in their lives. You can achieve anything. That's something that, my dad always used to say to me: you can be whoever you want to be. You can have whatever you want to have. You just need to set your mind to it. But don't forget the wonderful everyday. Isn't that the IKEA?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not surprised it's been taken on by a marketing slogan.
The marketeers are terrible. They're for picking. I have to, confess to being a marketeer. So, I do pick up on a good slogan. The power of the everyday. Yeah, the wonder in the everyday is something that I think during isolation we've been given the opportunity to see the wonder in the everyday if we can calm ourselves sufficiently.
Yeah, and there's something about ordinary which means you don't have to hide anymore or pretend or live up to an image of perfection. There's something about that is really freeing, because we're often trying to be brilliant or really creative and our best self. This idea of being our best self. It's like, my God, how exhausting, how exhausting to be our best self. And so I'm a big champion of simplicity, of ordinariness, of gentle purpose, all of these things, because to push or to strive or to, getting these elbows out to strain is being out of tune with our nature.
Yeah,
it's grabbing, when actually there's room for all of it. There's room for every feeling state, every thought that comes and goes. And, and then when we're comfortable with ordinary, it's a relief for other people, because they don't have to keep up a pretense. There's no need to then play this sort of best self game.
It makes it into a competition, doesn't it? It seemed so pertinent before lockdown, when people would say to you, I'm being my, I'm living my best life. I'm being my best self. And you're like, yeah, go for it. Have a goal, have a purpose. But actually that builds in that not good enough competitive edge, doesn't it? And which we don't need.
Yes, and that's a misunderstanding for me about the nature of purpose. Because, of course, purpose gives our lives meaning, and it enables us to focus on the things that really matter. But there's a misunderstanding that purpose equates to success, that it equates to being somebody, that somebody's put you somewhere and I've arrived, that nature of what purpose is, or that it's a future destination, that's somewhere that we will eventually get to. And that is, a misunderstanding of purpose.
Yeah, you can live in your purpose. You can live in it. And your purpose can be to just be. My purpose is to just be. And that's okay. That's good enough. And I think if we can break these barriers down, because, we're running on course now for a massive mental health issue, as people slowly start to ease out of lockdown, and they suddenly get told, you can now do this, and you can now do that. That urge to, that we're going to be overwhelmed by those messages again about, getting out there and finding, especially living in a capitalist society. It's now your responsibility to make money and be something. And I think that is going to cause a lot of people who have found this period of time so freeing, a lot of anxiety. And
Yeah, there'll be people who aren't quite ready to come out of the den, like little badgers coming out. Yeah, and it's just checking in with that, isn't it? About what's what's the landscape going to be like? How do we want to live? And
giving ourselves the opportunity and permission to just be and not rush at it. You don't have to rush at it. Life doesn't have to be a rush. It doesn't have to be a competition. There's no hurry. There's plenty of time. There is enough time, there is more than enough time that you will ever need to do everything you want and need to do. But we are, by the volunteers, they kind of, with their constant messaging, make us think that we're going to run out of time, that it's a competition, there's not enough for everybody to go round. And there is. That's just a marketing slogan.
Yeah, no, it reminds me, the purpose video I did about the apple tree.
Yes, I loved that.
Does an apple tree, is it concerned about its purpose? Oh,
it's all right. You're back.
I'm back. Oh, good. I was like, I turned into a robot. I saw myself become a little pixelated creature.
What happens is sometimes if your internet signal is not strong enough, and it will just dip, and it's happened a couple of times, but don't worry, I'll hang out here while you just hang out on the other side of the internet and come back. So exactly. If you could start that again. I found that amazing. You did this post for and you're doing the ABC, aren't you?
We're doing the A to Z of daily doses. Yes, small helpings of good stuff.
Yeah, you did A is for Apple. So if you could tell us that was wonderful. I loved it.
Well, it's touching on purpose that we've just been talking about, and I just asked the question of do you think an apple tree is concerned about its purpose, about whether it's going to produce like a bountiful crop? Are the apples going to be sweet? Maybe I should produce pears, all of this potential stress that this apple tree could be under. And of course not, apple trees simply grow apples, and before the apples arrive, the blossom comes into life, and then it follows that cycle. And it's just like the apple tree, our purpose is intrinsically embedded into our being, and that we don't need to go out and seek it. We just need to nurture it
and notice.
Yes, notice. And that for me is the most underrated skill as human beings, busy-minded human beings, is that we don't know how to notice anymore. And you standing and queuing up and suddenly seeing all of those things, when we feel like we have a problem or something needs to be sorted or we need to make a decision, I can guarantee there'll be somewhere where we haven't noticed. And if also on top of that, if we can notice without judgment or assumption or having already made your mind up, to simply observe, that is, where the answers come from.
Absolutely. As I say, during this time, I've done quite a lot of meditation, and I've been encouraging people to do meditation. And I think that gives us an increased awareness of the fact that we can just be and notice walking in nature. Just listen, just leave it's the gaps, isn't it? Lockdown is a gap.
Yeah, and even in the midst of like a domestic, we often think that being in the moment or having that happens on top of a mountain or whilst I'm in the forest, but it's available to us in the midst of an argument with your stepson, for example, that I'm having,
for example.
Right in the midst of like, oh my God, he's driving me crazy. This is nuts,
Yeah.
And if I just if I'm able to catch myself, often you can't, of course you can't. We're not sort of able to be so some can, the Zen masters, but certainly not. To be able to go, wow, I'm really caught in this. I'm really caught in this. And just giving that little bit of space, the whole thing can shift,
And you don't have to take that moment on with you. That's always what I think is like, it was a moment. You don't have to then, it doesn't have to become your life. So you had an argument with your stepson. It's done. Yeah. Move on. You don't have to carry that on into the next conversation and the next conversation you have with him or somebody else. It's done. It's over. It was a moment.
Oh, that's so true. It's when I remember we're speaking to my dad, who's a very anxious chappy at the moment because he's in complete self-isolation, isolation. He's like locked away in his little study. And I was speaking to him and he talked to me about his day. And I think he had like 20 minutes of a stressful moment. But I spoke to him and the whole conversation was about a 20-minute little glitch. And I was thinking, I didn't share this with him because he's dealing with, he's in his own things, is my own thing. It's like, my goodness, he's allowed a 20-minute little flurry to feed and infect his entire day, if not week, has become clouded. And just to be able to observe that was like, wow, Dad is really caught in that storm, We
can help by trying to change state, help people to change state at that point. As coaches and mentors, you can help people to change state by talking about other things, bringing in other things. But it's the reality of life, isn't it? We're trained that way. And it's good that, we are becoming aware and we're having these conversations to be aware of it. I know my two boys they've done so well in lockdown. They've been absolutely brilliant, not really arguing or anything. They've been great. And, that's too good to be true.
Wow.
That's never
What's the magic?
The truth's coming now. Wait. So yesterday afternoon, at about 6 o'clock, the whole thing exploded in a riot of screaming and shouting and pushing and shoving. And I didn't get involved. I just sat back and let it kind of go. And then my husband arrived and he said, why don't you just both go on your separate ways? And neither of us spoke about it again. And we haven't spoken about it again. Because otherwise I'd just carry on. They'd be like, well, you told me off and he told me off. And we just add to the negative energy. So we just left it. And it's like, it was inevitable there was going to be a flare up. Let's just move on and get over it. And I think that phrase, move on, can be misinterpreted as well. It's a really powerful thing. If you can just go, it's okay to let that happen. It happened. But we don't have to let it carry on become us. We don't have to live it. We don't have to be it. We can now just step away from it, notice what we noticed from it, learn what we needed to learn from it. I learned something from it. And now we move along. And today's been fine. And they've interacted okay. So
that reminds me. No, exactly. See how the day unfolds.
See how it goes. Yeah,
it reminds me of the difference between clean pain and dirty pain, and I think that can be so helpful when there's an idea that pain happens but suffering is optional.
Yes.
That when something we're confronted with something that is painful, that causes us frustration or upset, then the actual inciting incident is there that we deal with. And it's a bit like if you cut yourself, the initial pain is like, ow, but you then let it heal and it gets well, the skin seals over, and then it's all good. But if we start picking at this cut and not letting it heal, and we keep aggravating it, and it gets infected and bothering it, it's very much like that in our emotional life. If we continually ruminating and adding. That's a
really good analogy. I love that analogy. That our brains and our thoughts can be a little bit like an open wound, can't they? And if we keep bothering them instead of going, okay, I see you, I hear you. You know, I talk about, you know, there's the swamp of horror and misery, and then there's the happy place. And you know, it's okay to go and, you know, you look at the wound and you go, yeah, I acknowledge you, you're there, and it hurt, and I've learned something from that. Now I move into the happy place. It's good to acknowledge, and it's good to see what you were meant to learn from that. Sometimes there's nothing to learn at all. Sometimes it was just an accident and you'd cut yourself.
Because that reminds me, yes, that reminds me of Eckhart Tolle talks about the kind of Eastern philosophy stories of getting shot in the arm with an arrow. And over here in the West, we've got a sort of arrow in our arm, and we're like, who shot it? Where did it come from? Where did it, you know, this whole thing going on about where did it, when actually, you know, we have the capacity to simply take the arrow out. Take the arrow out. We don't necessarily need everything that goes around. Where did it come from? Who shot it? What day was it? I mean, you know, the analysis, this whole...
Gosh, that is very what's going on right now, isn't it? We're not going to enter that because we don't do those kind of discussions here. But there is, it's society, we are put under a lot of pressure to have an answer, aren't we? And sometimes there is no answer. Sometimes, like the boys fighting, it was just a moment. You know, there's no answer. There's going to be no, you know, and next time we'll do it differently, because, you know, it was just a moment. We just move on and go, okay, that's over now. And but societally, a bit like it's a competition. There's not enough for everyone. It's a finite resource. Culturally, we have this thing about, well, you have to place it. You have to land it somewhere. The arrow's on your arm. It has to have a landing. It doesn't. We can just feel it and then choose very cognitively, consciously, to just move on. Because otherwise you do get stuck.
Well, my favorite question to ask myself is, what am I making this mean?
Yeah.
You know, what am I making this mean? Because a lot. I'll be adding a whole lot of stuff. I make it mean, no.
Yeah, this is like your dad, like you're saying, in your dad, you know, he made something that was 20 minutes mean a massive amount that had contextual and, you know, shades of meaning to it. And it do it if you consciously want to, and you think it's important, but you don't have to. Yeah. So it's you know, at the end of the day, we all have choices, and this is we have a choice right now in this phase of lockdown to decide what we want our new normal to be. Could look exactly like the old normal. That's okay. Don't let ourselves be pressured.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, my personal situation here is my partner's work has gone, so there's a whole unknown that could be incredibly stressful. There could be a whole living through these 12 weeks so far of, you know, if it being really uncomfortable, what's going to happen, what we're going to do, how are we going to do that, or you know, the situation is Justin hasn't got work at the moment. Okay. Can that be okay? What am I making it mean that he hasn't? That we can't afford our mortgages, what we're going to be able to do? Oh my God, we might end up having to live in a caravan. You know, the whole thing that goes on.
Absolutely. A bohemian traveller in a tent.
Yes.
And 12 weeks of not having any work.
Yeah. And
I think there was a layer of that going on with my yesterday, and I'd done really well. And then all of a sudden, I think there was a layer of, hang on a minute, there could be some other stuff going on here. And that was definitely pulling me down. And I had to really kind of unpick it. I had to say, what am I making this mean? And to myself. And I was making it mean we were going to be homeless and starving. And, you know, the reality is that's not going to be the case. And
yes, the bag lady syndrome is universal, isn't it? We're all going to end up on the screen. No, it's like such a deep down fear.
It weighs heavily on you, and you have to just be aware of it. and not take yourself there, because, you know, I've seen, you know, my business kind of looked like it was going to implode. You know, I had a very real-time business, and yet now my business has opportunity for exponential growth because of what's happened, the gap that appeared, the opportunity that appeared in this time. And I realized that my business has grown. In 2008, it grew when there was a massive downturn. We had the financial crash, and it's grown again. Now, no, I'm not willing on any more pandemics or financial crashes, I promise you. But I do see the opportunity now with acceptance. Accepting that life isn't linear, stuff happens. It's out of my control. It's my choice how to view it.
Yeah, because I believe that there's something beyond our own personal psychology that is already home.
Yeah.
And that, for me, I think is a profound thing to not just intellectually go, oh, yes, I understand that, but to really know, you know, to really know.
It's important to know that you don't have to know.
Yes.
Once I did my master's, and I was focused on going straight into a PhD, and I stopped, and I realized, and I interacted with a few people, and I went to a funeral of a very good friend, and I came to the realization that it's okay not to know. I don't have to analyze everything. I don't have to have an answer for everything. I can know that there is things out there that I don't know, and that's okay. Yeah, we don't have to know. And there is definitely stuff going on I don't know.
Oh, there's such power in not knowing. You know, I don't know. And we're really scared to say that I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. And often, you know, if we crawl up and we come to, I don't know what to do here, we either retreat back and scuttle back and go, oh, that didn't work. I don't know. I'm going to scurry back, and we become kind of like that victim, don't we?
Yeah, back into our comfort zone of,
yes,
this is where I know I'm staying here.
Or there's the overachiever that will come in and like find its way, you know, to just, I'm going to get over this obstacle. Where if we don't know,
cannonball dragging. That's my cannonball. So you're going to drag that cannonball up that hill with you, are you? Or are you brave enough just to dwell for a bit and see what happens? Let it go. I remember having I was driving in a car. I'd been to see someone, and I was with an artist in the car. I will name the artist. It was Will Taylor. And we'd been to see a client. And as we got back in the car, I received a text message that was very worrying. And we were about to embark on a 3-hour journey. And he said to me, just leave it. Just leave it. It might be solved by the time we get back. And I was like, okay. And I've adopted that in my life now. If things aren't quite, they look difficult and I don't know. He was absolutely right. By the time I got to the other end of the 3 hours and I picked up my phone again, the next text message was, oh, don't worry about that. I fixed it now. And I was like, I said to him, okay, I've learned a massive lesson in a 3-hour journey, and I adopt that in my life now. If something isn't quite going how it looks difficult and it's causing me some distress, I go, okay, just walk away. Leave it. Let it be. Don't bother the wound. Don't wriggle the arrow. Just leave it there.
Yeah, because that reminds me of another thing that I'd like to share, actually, that I have found just so helpful is knowing what business you're in. Because this is a Byron Katie thing, which I found just like, that is fantastic. There are 3 types of business. There's your business, there's other people's business, and then there's like the universe business or God's business, however you want to frame it. If God is something that you find to have a different relationship, but anything other.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee if there's any level of stress going on, Ask yourself the question of whose business am I in? And I can guarantee you won't be in your own.
I love that, because I remember as a child, we would often be told, mind your own business.
Yeah.
Mind your own business. Stop getting involved in stuff that is nothing to do with you. But we, as adults, we do it, don't we?
And I think we're in other people's business most of the time.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is, not only is it unhelpful for anybody else, is that it also means that we vacated ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, our vessel is empty because we're so concerned with what they're doing, what they should be doing. And that goes, you know, from friends and neighbours and family to politics, to climate change, to nurses. Should we be clapping them? Shouldn't we be clapping them? You know, everything. It spins
Should
out.
we be making rainbows? Should we be saying thank you? They're just doing their job. They don't want you to do that. Do they want you to do that?
Yeah.
You know, and there'll be a spectrum of within those groups of some will want it and some won't, because we're all individuals and we all have our own perspective, and it's important to recognize that, notice.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll be having a whole load of judgment about our neighbour that's chosen not to clap, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, they didn't come out, did they? You know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, from the minor gossip to the major, you know, country to country kind of negotiation.
They did it that way, so should we have done it that way? Yeah. It's not our business. If it's not your business, as my mum would have always said to me as a child, mind your own business. I'm sure there was some other angle that she added to that, about something about your nose will be chopped off, or you'd
taking your nose away in your hand.
Okay, that's it, Nosy Parker, you've lost your nose, or your face will freeze if the wind blows. I'm sure she had some other very funny sayings like that. I think that's it's hilarious, the phrases. But isn't it funny, those old sayings, they often come back to me now, those sayings that we would have been said to us in childhood. They were aware of these things. They just didn't have the words to articulate it. I suppose, you know, they were the post-war generation, weren't they? And they didn't have the words to articulate it. And, you know, we have the words to articulate it now. That, you know, is it your business? Is what your dad was worrying about for 20 minutes, was that his business? Yeah. Did he need to give it attention? Were my boys arguing over something that was my business? No, they weren't. So I just stayed out of it. And left them to it, and they'll get over it much quicker without me bothering the wound, wiggling the arrow. And I think that's something that, you know, that's a massive takeaway. I'm going to write down some of these Byron Katie things that you've said, and I'll put them on a blog post so everyone can see them, because I think they're something that I wasn't aware of, and, you know, I've learned. I didn't know that. And I didn't know it or needed to know it, but actually they're very useful. That's it. What do we say? There's Christina just said that. Not my monkey, not my circus.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh.
I say that a lot. Not my monkey, not my circus. You know, exactly. I'm not getting involved. It's not my monkey, not my circus to get involved with. And it's so helpful if you can create that level of detachment and non-judgmental level of detachment. So we have a question. Let's have a look at the question. The question is from Fran. So I think, Fran, I'm going to invite you up on screen and you can ask your question yourself. Let's see.
Oh, this is a whole new thing.
Yeah, I really like doing this, is letting people ask the questions themselves. And so if anyone else has got any questions, then do pop them in the bottom box and we can ask you up on screen to join us. We're, you know, coming to the end of today's session. I hope you found it as interesting and as fascinating as I have. An hour goes so quickly. Here's Fran. Hello, Fran.
Hi.
Well, I'm not quite sure. I'd rather ask it in person actually than type it. Because my question was around, is there some kind of training for what you teach other people, or have you literally just found your way along as you've gone along? Have you just, I mean, it sounds a bit intrusive, but I'm just intrigued.
No, that's fine.
No, I think
you're very welcome to ask that.
Yeah, because we've done coaching training, and the Byron Katie training. But is there other training that you've done, Cathy?
Yes, I've trained with the Martha Beck Institute, which is a year's coaching training. And I did that 3 years ago now, and that was really to kind of anchor in kind of what I already knew, but I was wanting to find a way to articulate it with clients and find a way to really kind of get it kind of certified, really, kind of getting the training work. Yeah.
And for the clients, they might have found that a bit helpful to them to know that you had a sort of training.
No, absolutely. There's definitely a sense of, who are you? If you're an expert by experience, but what's your training, what are your credentials? And so there's definitely space for that as well, because if I'm working with people who are a level of stress and distress, they want to be able, trust is so fundamental, isn't it, to building any relationship, and that really helps to get a sense of trust with
I couldn't agree more, because I know I didn't feel I had sufficient credentials until I did my master's, and then I did the coaching training to feel I wasn't a danger to myself or other people. I didn't want to be a danger. I didn't want to, because I knew that I had a lot of compassion, and I knew that I had good listening skills and professional ability, but I didn't want to be a danger to myself to take on people's worries and stress. I needed training for that. And I didn't want to be a danger to others by saying things that hadn't been scientifically researched. So I think trust in your professional practitioner is an incredibly important thing. And when you're looking for a practitioner to work with, looking at their credentials is a very important thing to do. We do that, we wouldn't go and see a doctor without knowing what their credentials were, and we wouldn't buy probably vegetables or meat off of someone who didn't have some semblance of knowing what they were doing. They could have put all sorts of poisons on them and then said, look, I've got the biggest mushrooms in the world, but they'll kill you if you eat them. So you don't need some sort of professional status, I think, and that's something to be really careful of in this marketplace, because there are a lot of people who maybe haven't got those professional qualifications, and I think people should be just cautious, notice what they notice, and find the person you have rapport with. You need to find someone who you have rapport with as well. I think that's really important.
Yeah, well, that's I offer in my work a kind of 20-minute free kind of consultation, just so we can find out if we are the right fit, because I might be talking to people who are wanting something different, a different approach, and that's absolutely fine. It's just so to dive into this kind of work together, there needs to be a real sense of being able to be open and honest,
I think rapport, and that's why most of us do that. The first few is getting to know you, isn't it? And then you're not the right person. Like we're saying, there's a spectrum of perspectives for everything. There's a spectrum of perspectives that we have that phrase, personality clash. You could have a personality clash with someone, and it's never going to work. So it's important. Yeah. Thank you, Fran. Did you have any other questions that you wanted to ask? Was that it?
I think so. I suspect when you did your more traditional training, it probably just sort of validated for yourself what you had learned along the way, and maybe it explains some of it to you as well.
Yeah, it kind of looked at sort of a 4-square approach, where there's 4 different squares that people find themselves in. There's square 1, square. So you kind of identify the squares and whether people are stuck in square 1, which is kind of in quite a distressed state. Square 2, they're a bit further along. They're in the kind of dreaming and scheming phase. And, so you start to be able to kind of plot it and work it out. And it kind of underpins some of the structure.
Excellent.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I will take you off screen now. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Fran.
There we go. I think it's lovely. If anyone else has got a question that you want to ask and you haven't had the time today, because we're now at 2:00, so that went like a flash. I've
It went
loved it,
great.
Cathy. Thank you so much. I
Oh,
mean, you and I have spent and
I
can
know,
spend
that's the thing,
hours
isn't it? 6 hours of
chatting.
nattering.
Yeah, we have done several consecutive hours of just talking and shooting the breeze, haven't we? So
I just want to say, I love Caroline's little message here, which is, thank you, Lesley and Cathy. Very interesting. Sorry I was late, but I was in the queue for the post office. Grr.
Grr.
I love that. It's exactly what we've been talking about earlier, isn't
Yeah,
it?
we've been talking all about that, Caroline. You can watch it back on the Pure website. So these all go up as soon as they download. We put them up on YouTube, and then Christina puts them up onto the website. So they're all there, ready for you to enjoy on Catch Up TV whenever. And yeah, just being present in your post office queue was worth it. And you saw it for a bit. I'm glad you saw it for a bit. And yeah, but I love the idea that we can do catch up as well. And it's been on live, and there's been lots of people watching on live as well, which is great. And this will be on the Facebook page now as well forever, so people can watch it. And thank you so much. If you could pop your contact details into the sidebar so people can contact you if they want to, that'd be great, Cathy.
Is that for me?
Yes, that's for
Yes.
you. Yes, if you can pop your
where it says say something nice.
Say something nice. So if you put in there your website and your email, and then that will be always forever on this event, so people can come back and look at it whenever they want to and get your details. I will do a little blog post about the Byron Katie things as a reminder, and I'll also put Cathy's contact details on there as well, so you'll have it on the blog post on the website as well. And I really hope everyone's enjoyed that. I absolutely loved it. We speak the same language, so it's a pleasure for me.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It just sort of flows, doesn't it? There we go.
I think the other thing you need to do is tell us, just as before we go, the final word is going to go to the cheese plant behind you. And you're going to tell me about the pool party that the cheese plant goes on every week. Because I said I'm really bad at keeping house plants, and Cathy said to me, "Oh, you have to give them a pool party."
Well, since lockdown, I have been slowly getting more houseplants, new friends to share my house with. And so I've got lots and lots and lots of them. And so every week I put them into a little pool party together. So I fill my bath with a couple of inches of water. I gather them all together and leave them there for an hour, and they all hang out, and I pop in and say, "Hi guys, how you doing?" And then I drain the water and then put them back, and they are thriving.
Oh, thriving. Maybe that's what we all need to do. Just sit in a couple of inches of
water.
Sit
in a couple of water.
Once a week.
Once a week.
Just have someone pop in and go, "How you doing?"
How you doing? Drink it all up.
Doing? Exactly. And then I think that's an analogy for life. Just give yourself permission once a week to just sit in an inch of water and just notice what you notice. You'll probably get a little bit chilly. But yeah, feed yourself. I think that's an analogy for life. Make sure you feed your soul as well as you feed your tummy. And hopefully that's what we're doing, giving you a bit of soul food once a week to keep you going and nurture you all along the way. And I hope you've all enjoyed it. And I have had a lovely time. Thank you, my love.
Me too. Thank you for the invitation. It's been lovely.
You're welcome. Thank you for being the nemesis that started all of this off. And
I know.
Everybody's got to meet you now and see your face. Because I've spoken about Cathy quite a few times. Like, Cathy set us on this journey. So now they all know what Cathy looks and sounds like. And that's amazing. So thank you. I hopefully see you very soon in real time, and we can go for a socially distanced walk with the dogs.
With our dogs. I'd love that. Yes, please.
And
so what do I do now? Do I sign off, or do I just sit here and smile?
Just sit there and smile, and I'm going to end the broadcast and say goodbye to everybody. So thank you for being an amazing guest, and I'll speak to you very soon. Okay, take care, everybody, and we'll see you all very soon.
Bye.